Welcome to Vocabulary Lesson 10. This is the first video of 4 videos for your final vocabulary additional focus. Each video will have 20 words in it, which means that this assessment will actually have 80 words overall to learn before you can take the assessment. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So for our first word, we have scrutinize, which is a verb, to scrutinize, and it means to examine closely. So after hearing the writer's pitch for the show and scrutinizing the details, Liz Lemon shut them down knowing that they were terrible ideas. So you consider closely and critically. If you would like to take the verb scrutinize and turn it into a noun, it would become scrutiny. Alright? Scrutinize and scrutiny. So next up we have coalesce, which is a verb, and it means to come together, to merge, to join. Now coalesce often is used when talking about liquids. So for instance, here beneath the microscope, Sasha could see the water droplets coalescing. However, sometimes the word coalesce can be used to talk about people, to talk about things, to talk about businesses coming together. And when you use it in that way, the author is intending to create the image of two droplets of water or some kind of liquid becoming one droplet. So very closely combining in order to create one entity. So if you see coming together, to merge, to join being used in reference to people, places, or things, do know that it's trying to create this image, and that image right there where they combine, in order to communicate how closely these things have combined. Alright, so for your next word we have orthodox, which is an adjective, and it means standard, commonly accepted, and conventional. Oftentimes the word orthodox is related to religion, such as the Orthodox Church. However, there are times in which orthodox is used outside of concepts of religion. So for instance, while Delaney took an orthodox approach to the disease, Mitchell wanted to explore the benefits of alternative medicine. So here orthodox is considered the standard, commonly accepted, conventional approach to diseases, so orthodox medicine in comparison to alternative medicine. So that is an adjective. So our next word is innate, which is also an adjective, and innate means inborn and inherited, so naturally occurring from birth. So for instance, here we see, while many would argue that cats have an innate tendency to eat rats, Max the cat and Filbert the rat are actually excellent friends. So here, innate tendency, that's oftentimes how the word's used. Innate tendency, innate urge, innate instinct. So these are tendencies that exist from the very birth of an animal. So oftentimes we consider that instinct. Alright, for our next word we have preclude, which is a verb. So preclude means to prevent, to make impossible. So here we see it, there are often signs that preclude dangerous situations. However, viewers do not always heed such warnings. So here you have a danger with thin ice, and it's precluding a situation in which ice skaters would go on the ice and fall in. So while the definition to prevent, to make impossible sounds negative in connotation, preclude is actually oftentimes used in a positive way as a warning to something dangerous. Other times you might say what do you call them? The advertisements, the previews precluded the movie. So the previews came before the movie in order to kind of prepare people for the cinematic event. Alright, so next we have efface, which is a verb, and it means to erase, to wipe out. So the cats work together to efface mice, and rats, and even squirrels from the face of this earth. So efface means to completely get rid of, to wipe from the face of the earth, and that's what efface means. So normally efface has pretty negative connotations. Alright, so for our next word, we have marred, which is an adjective, and it means damaged or bruised. So here we have Dory's mind was marred by memory loss. However, this did not stop her from practicing kindness and going on adventures. So marred essentially means damaged here and harmed by memory loss. Marred is oftentimes used to describe if somebody's been attacked by a dog, they've been marred by a dog. So that might be where you have heard the word before. However, even though normally it's related to kind of physical or mental damage, you could even say something along the lines of the harsh words marred Janie's confidence to continue. So do know that it can be used to kind of like figuratively in an emotional way. It doesn't need to actually be like a physical harm. Alright, so let's move on to our next word. So here we have ameliorate, which is a verb, and it means to make better, to improve. So here we have, after Principal Skinner used school funds to build a golf course in his backyard, whoops, the school superintendent explained nothing can ameliorate the ineptitude of Principal Skinner. So ameliorate means to make better, to improve. Here, there's nothing that Principal Skinner can do to make up for the fact that he misused school funds. And so that's how ameliorate is used. So here we have prodigious, which is an adjective. And it means of enormous quantity or size. So here we have, he had a prodigious appetite, being able to consume 9 pounds of steak at a meal. So a word from previous videos that this might remind you of is prodigal. However, do not make a connection between these words. So prodigal means to spend carelessly. And even though prodigal has a very similar spelling to prodigious, they do not mean the same thing. If you're looking for a word that's related to prodigious, what you're looking for is prodigy. So prodigy is the noun form of the adjective prodigious. So please don't mix up prodigal and prodigy. While they sound the same, they mean very, very different things. So for our next word, we have concise, which is an adjective, and it's briefly and clearly stated. Concise might remind you of another word from the past, which is brevity. However, brevity is a noun. So you might say a concise statement allows you to use brevity. So here we have, taking only a second or so, the substitute teacher concisely explained to the kindergarten class what he needed them to do. So concise is the adjective and concisely is our adverb. And shut up while rude is definitely a very concise way to explain something. Alright, so next word. We have immutable, which is an adjective, and it means unchanging and permanent. So here we have, while we humans are constantly changing, Liza knew there was one immutable truth to her personality. She loved pizza. So it's unchangeable, unarguable, will always be the case. And it is an adjective. For our next word, we have stoic, which is also an adjective, and it means indifferent, which is a word we've had in a previous video, to pleasure and pain and brave. So while in the previous videos we talked about how indifferent actually has pretty negative connotations, in contrast, stoic has very positive connotations, has connotations of being strong and focused and capable. So here, for instance, we have Mr. Spock prided himself upon his stoic demeanor, believing that logic was far more powerful than emotions. So stoic is an adjective that has positive connotations of somebody who utilizes logic and can remain very practical and focused in very difficult situations. Alright, for our next word we have innocuous. So innocuous is an adjective that means harmless. So here we have, even though Dwight would often complain about his coworkers and plot against them, even though Dwight would often, that's not correct, but often would complain about his coworkers and plot against them towards their ruin, in reality he's quite innocuous. So that means harmless. So other words that this might remind you of are virulent, which means very harmful. So innocuous and virulent would be considered opposite in meaning. So innocuous means harmless. So if you say an innocuous virus, that means a virus that cannot harm you. An innocuous threat is kind of an oxymoron because it means a threat that cannot harm you. So next up we have indolence, which is a noun, and it means laziness. So here we have, Andy failed all of his classes because he was an indolent student. So indolent, in fact, that he was too lazy to even eat bacon. That's just crazy. So here we have indolence, which is the noun, and we can see here that indolent is the adjective. So indolent with a T is the adjective, indolence with the CE is the noun. And so this word might remind you of lethargy, it might remind you of languid. Those words are very similar. However, it would be worthwhile to go and look at the kind of subtle differences between them so that you're able to tell the difference in their uses and use them as correctly as possible in different circumstances. So here we have benign for our next word, and benign means harmless. Now we've just had a word that means the same thing, which is innocuous. So essentially they're synonyms. Now with benign, innocuous is oftentimes used in science and even medicine, and benign is even more so used in medicine. You might recognize it from the term benign tumor, which is the opposite of a malignant tumor. So after running the necessary tests, it was determined that the tumor was benign, which means that it is harmless, and radiation treatment would not be needed. So benign is very often used in medicine, and that's most commonly when you would see it. Other times you might see benign would be in a sentence such as, her insult was benign, he knew it was due to the fact that she was tired. So when using benign, you can use it in other situations, but oftentimes readers are going to perceive it as being referential to something like a benign tumor. So a benign statement, people are going to think about kind of tumors and something harmful. So keep that in mind when you're using it, because you can use that very purposefully in your writing. So next up we have the word tedious, which is an adjective, and it means boring and painstaking. So we've had a lot of words that means boring. We have insipid and banal and several others. So it's a good idea to go and look at all of them to make sure you understand the differences. In this case, tedious is very reliant on the idea of painstaking. It's something that takes forever and almost creates a sense of emotional pain because it takes so long. So here we have our sentence. The tedious meeting lasted a full 2 hours, resulting in a room of antsy and cranky employees. So here we see tedious being used as the adjective, and it's describing a meeting that lasts for a very long time, and we can see that this guy here is even experiencing some physical pain, rubbing his head. He has a headache because it's lasted so long. And so that's when you would use the word tedious. So next up we have the word amiable, which is an adjective meaning friendly. So Liz Lemon was an amiable woman who believed in dreams and hugs, even if they were the dreams and hugs of annoying people. So amiable means friendly. Oftentimes it also has connotations of being easygoing and accepting. So keep that in mind when using the word. Next we have laud, which is a verb, and it means to praise. This might remind you of previous words such as extol, so keep that in mind. Extol and laud essentially mean the exact same thing. They're synonymous. There's no difference really there. But we have at the celebration in honor of Bilbo Baggins, the other hobbits lauded the great achievements of his life. And so a laud might sound really similar because it sounds like applaud, and it should. They have the same root word. So next up we have caustic, which is an adjective, burning, uncomplimentary. So here we have the signs warned of caustic chemicals that could cause serious harm if mishandled. So caustic here is used in its most kind of practical way when it's talking about chemicals. However, you can also use the word caustic when talking about words, for instance. The caustic words left a mark upon her emotions. So it's the idea that it can be used again figuratively or literally. In the sentence it's being used literally, but also keep in mind you can use it figuratively. For our next word we have atrophy, which is a verb, to waste away from lack of use. So this is a very medical term. After tearing a tendon in her bicep, Lydia was unable to use her arm. By the time it healed, the muscles had begun to atrophy, which means to break down due to lack of use. Alright, so those are our words for this round. Go ahead and make sure to use your practice slides so that you can study them. Good luck and thank you for watching this video.